Alright, I'm back with more NBA coverage, and in this one, I'll be covering a number of different developments around the league, including the imminent NBA Finals coming on later on tonight. So to get straight into it, first, there were a couple of moves surrounding coaches, or events surrounding coaches for that matter, as Joe Mazulla, the Celtics head coach, will win Coach of the Year after a season in which they were not expected to even be a contending team, yet still managed to come out with a great record overall and another season with 55 plus wins. For a coach in Joe Mazulla, who's been able to do that 4 times in his first few seasons with as young as he already is, it puts this Celtics team in a case where even with the first round exit against the 76ers, this playoff run, it's still like they're going to be fine for the long run, as long as Mazulla is there, clearly. He knows exactly what the hell he's doing, especially when it comes to his defensive IQ. Now, did that lack a little bit in the playoff run? Yes, absolutely. I'd chalk that up to execution rather than the spots he was putting them in on that side of the ball. And frankly, that's just something that'd have to be improved from the Celtics team in general. But it's a well-deserved award for Joe Mazulla. Of course, many coaches this season had a bid for it, and a fair one at that. So there can only be one at the end of the day, and they chose Mazulla. As for Kenny Atkinson, yeah, analytically speaking, we won the series early. We won the series often. And there was no realistic shot that we were ever facing a deficit. Really? Yes, that man, though, for as dumb, as stupid as that fucking statement was, he has obviously accomplished a lot with this Cleveland team already in just his couple seasons there. They have one of the top seeds in the Eastern Conference entirely in 2024-25, and then proceeded to follow that up with another great regular season this year, along with adding James Harden at the trade deadline for the regular season. When he's doing that well, as a coach who has just come back to the ranks in that particular spot, it's hard to suggest that one series like this, even if these statements are fireable in other cases, it's like, he's clearly proven to be a good head coach for your organization. And so they decided to make an official statement that he was returning to Cleveland. I figured this was a no-brainer. Of course, that stuff can question, some of your certainty there and allow doubt to creep in. But Atkinson has had this team on the sure track. It is about what they will do next that matters the most, and will determine whether or not Kenny Atkinson can fulfill his contract with the team, though. Because now you've ascended a step further. And there are going to be even higher expectations for a team that is already the highest active payroll in the league, that is eligible to give Donovan Mitchell either a 4-year deal worth around I want to say 64 or 350 million dollar deal? 5-year, $350 million deal if he waits to sign it. They're already cap-stricken, and that's going to get way worse. So you could argue they're trending in the wrong direction, and they are still yet in a win-now mode. Kenny Atkinson has had them in win-now territory. It's a perfect match for the moment. But, man, his over-reliance on analytics are going to have to at least shift a little bit if he wants to carve out a longer tenure with this team than the initial contract he was given upon his hiring. Also, key news for the NBA in general, before getting into talking about, the series a little bit and some expectations, some things to look out for. The vote for the 3-2-1 lottery proposal on May 28th would go favorably, and I mean very favorably. Of course, I'd read about the proposal in the months leading up to it, and essentially the very worst teams in the NBA, especially in the 1 through 3 seeds of the bottom teams out there, they have worse odds of being able to draft first overall. And upon hearing it, it's like, damn. Again, going back to the Sports Illustrated quote that I was talking about in reference to other lottery initiatives to fix it and the tanking problem, these teams are sometimes just poorly constructed, and there isn't much else that they can rely on. They're not teams that are free agency destinations and priorities for these players. They're not teams that are in large markets most of the time. They are just stuck with what they have, and there's nothing that they can really do to control it. So forcing them to suffer that, if they are deemed to be tanking, it's still a question on exactly how can you tell that. But nevertheless, it went through with flying colors. In fact, there was only one team that voted against it in a 29-1 count as it passed on May 28th, meaning that this 3-2-1 lottery style will be the new format for the 2027 NBA draft and will go into effect there. The one team who voted against this was the Grizzlies, if you can believe that. Why? Well, per this example, they're bound to suffer the most. And you imagine with them having to give up all of those assets and get them in return in the first place for Desmond Bane, you get 5 first-round picks, but at the same time, they're not all your own. And what ended up happening here, for this example from one of the USA Today sites that I looked at, was that the Grizzlies essentially cannot select within the top 5 next year because the Jazz had the rights to the pick initially. It's coming through them, and they've been finishing in the top 5 of the draft lottery for the past 2 years. The rule is 3 consecutive drafts. You can't go over that, and that would break the clause right then and right there. So, all in all, it's the Grizzlies just trying to save their own asses because they know they're going to get screwed the fuck over in the next draft. But you know what? It is what it is. You decided to move on from all your assets, and you're probably going to move on from John Morant too. So there's a risk and reward there. Because if they do actually move on from John Morant, and even with him right now, even if they keep him up to the trade deadline or something like that, you are more than likely going to need a rebuild to recuperate on all of those assets fully. And that's the point of getting all that draft capital back in the first place. Now it's about making sure that it lands in the right spot. And a team, in this case, will not be guaranteed as much as they were in the past to reach that specific level of a finish in the lottery. Some other elements of this include the fact that they are flattened for the worst teams in the league. So again, 1 through 3 seeds in terms of, low rankings will actually have lower percentages of odds to get the first overall pick. And they'll reward teams that are actually competing. So for your non-playing and playoff teams, they get 3 lottery balls each. 9 and 10 seeds in each conference will get at least 2 lottery balls each, and 7 and 8 seeds will also get a lottery ball each. While those who fall in the draft relegation zone that they have can fall no lower than the 12th overall pick in any given draft. So there are a lot of different technicalities, of course, but the point is to, again, give more room for these teams to compete to their best of their abilities and try to put a better overall product on the floor. The fact that it passed with just a single team voting against it means that at some point along the line, they were convinced that, hey, this could potentially work, and they stuck with that for the whole way through to get this process done and over with. So I do find that pretty interesting. And who knows, when it comes to the 2027 draft, it's a little too far out to know right now the top talent and understand how good or bad the draft class may be. There's a world in which we could be spoiled after this 2026 cycle goes through, seeing just how stacked and deep it appears to be already before we've even heard any of these names officially called into the NBA offices of these teams. But again, for the long run, and not even, to like completely say that this is the entire structure of everything moving forward. Of course, things can always be tweaked and changed, and they can always, put things to another boat to bring in more ideas if need be. The trial basis for the 3-2-1 lottery runs up until the 2030 draft, and then afterwards they can come back to the drawing board, they can come back to the negotiating table and come up with different ideas from there, or maybe tweaking, some changes to it. So anything is fair from that standpoint. But hey, all you tanking ass niggas, man, all you tanking ass teams out there, y'all better stop it, because they're on your case. And as weird as it is to suggest that, the competing teams, the teams in the playoff zone, may have higher odds at any given point of time, it could really shake up the way that teams decide to build their rosters. And that conversation has gone on countless times after its confirmation and incorporation into the new league system. Now, of course, it won't be taking effect until next year, pretty much, but you have to start game planning. If you are a front office member, if you are a player, in a way, you have to start game planning around that and trying to figure out what the best way to construct your roster might be. It also means that, hey, while we do love to see a homegrown talent progressing through years and years of potential struggles and lowlights into becoming one of the better players in their respective leagues, like, those are always great stories. But something like this as well means that, especially for the top 5 teams in back-to-back drafts, I would say, you have to ensure that you're making the most out of them. Because this literally requires you to know that you are getting the best out of your player at any given point of time. And if they can't give that to you, no matter how young they are, your best option may be to move on from them entirely and accept the fact that your value is tanked to that level to where now you are being somewhat, I'm not going to say reprimanded, but you're not going to have too many cracks at the bat here in this case. You're just not going to. So being mindful of that is important. But on to the series now. Man, as I said in a different media, I guess they really do make sense when they say that history repeats itself. Because this Spurs-Knicks final is obviously, by this point, a rematch of the 1999 NBA Finals. The same ones that essentially started off the era of the Spurs dynasty and started, in a way, the Hall of Fame career of Tim Duncan. Man, I mean, ever since that very point of time, from that 1999 season onward, the Spurs have been, for the most part, an organization modeling excellence all over the place. As I stated in the last video, you have all those Hall of Famers willing to take times out of their day to come back and coach up the young guys as it is. And they themselves obviously had to go through that process once upon a time. So now passing on that information while understanding that these are all players that filled in their roles incredibly well and led the Spurs to be one of the most successful dynasties of the modern era of basketball, essentially. They were playing in some dead ball, but we have rarely seen a team be able to take one season and make the NBA Finals and then do it again and again. We haven't seen that kind of consistency in quite a while outside of the mid-2010s Golden State Warriors. That is really the only thing rivaling that kind of run in the modern era. And maybe the early aughts Los Angeles Lakers as well. Those are the only two other teams you can think of. And the Spurs have just consistently brought that. Now, again, with the entire, just dispute between Kawhi Leonard and the like, that got a little chaotic. And they had all these other players like DeJounte Murray, like DeMar DeRozan, like Pirtle, trying to come in there, trying to help give them an assist. And that push was not nearly enough for them to be a successful organization. They had, again, prided themselves on just consistent dominance and effective movement all across the floor, and they seemingly lost all of that once it was decided that, hey, we're going to give Kawhi Leonard all these touches, and you're going to have to find a way to fit around him. Maybe that system was okay in a fashion, but it must have done something wrong when you have everyone, seemingly everyone, having this specific dispute and on bad terms with Kawhi Leonard leaving to the Raptors. And from there, the rest is history for that team. But the Spurs, it took a while for them to recover. They were clearly not the same team. And again, a lot has happened to them with, losing core contributors and, of course, not having Coach Greg Popovich on the sideline anymore. But for this series, this entire young team has stepped up. And so they truly shouldn't miss much of a step there. I don't believe so. Like this Spurs team, they may not be on a roll like the Knicks are, but they are too damn formidable to just discredit completely. Like they are truly a threat to be watched out for. And the Knicks know that coming in, but they also know that before this time, it was night and day for the Knicks essentially since that series. Again, they've had very brief yet fleeting moments of success over the last 27 years. Crazy to say that. They had struggled to make an NBA Finals appearance since that time. They'd even struggled to make a conference finals that time. I mean, my goodness. It was insane. The lack of talent that this Knicks team consistently brought in, paired up with like one guy that could potentially lead the charge. In a way, your Carmelo Anthony's, your Stephon Marbury's, from time to time, came in and suited up. And then you just had your reject players. Your Clay Anthony Early's, your Courtney Lee's, your Tracy McGrady's, who actually appeared for both. If you can believe that. Yes, it got that bad for New York. To where they decided to take a chance on him at that age of his career. No. Too much was going on with this Knicks team. And not even just from the player personnel standpoint. You had Isaiah Thomas as a front office member and a coach, I believe, and he couldn't get it done. Even Phil Jackson, the great Phil Jackson, tried to bring his own revolutionary offense to save the day in New York, and it couldn't even work out for them truly stringing together a season of inspiration that could get that team all the way to a deep playoff run. They didn't even come remotely close in that time. And it just got worse and worse and worse, flaring up even in the early 2020s before they started getting deep in the bag of trades. Shedding off Julius Randle, shedding off Dante DiVincenzo as well, once upon a time, shedding off RJ Barrett and the like, to get back guys now in Jalen Brunson and Josh Hart and Mikal Bridges. A lot of others who have meant this much as complementary pieces to this overall team. They thrive on chemistry. Yes, it may very well be Jalen Brunson ball. We love a good post touch from him every now and then. But this man is surrounded by Villanova men and players who legitimately can compound off of what he is doing at any one point of time. If he needs to pass out of it, he can trust, and he has some shooters on the wing, and he can trust, and he has a couple guys every now and then who can put the ball on the floor and make plays happen in that right. Like all across the board, the Knicks have just been on it. And especially from the standpoint of, not only are they scoring this much on offense, but they are also truly playing like a defense inspired by whatever might have happened earlier in an individual person's life or in an individual person's career. I mean, man, it's just crazy to think about. So you have all that going on with these two teams set to face off now in this game tonight. Now, the main thing and a developing story over the past couple days was that Mitchell Robinson underwent surgery on his right pinky finger and is currently set to appear in Game 1 of the NBA Finals. A recent report from Shams Charania held that to be true also. So, from that standpoint, things are interesting. And we're talking about a pinky finger. I can imagine if that hits the ball, especially the top of this finger, if it hits the ball, that is immeasurable pain that I have no way of diagnosing and do not want any parts of. Ever. The fact that Mitchell Robinson is soldiering up and playing through this is commendable at this point. And it's also kind of like, what do you expect? This is the series. These fans in particular have been waiting for this damn long. We got to give the people what they want to see. And they want to see all the usual bodies out there. So if I still have to be the sixth man and the offensive rebounder off the bench, hey, I'm going to do what I have to do. I'm going to push through it, and we're going to get the job done. So I like to see that mentality from Mitchell Robinson, but it might leave him a little, and I mean very little, apprehensive in regards to, crashing the glass. Just enough for the Spurs to try to exploit it. Again, like, you're not worrying about intentional injuries, but any way that you can get an advantage on this Knicks team, you'll try to go for it. And so they're truly going to work on forcing Mitchell Robinson. Honestly, I would expect them to force him to, maybe take a few free throws, but also put up some legitimate shots and not just, cuts to the back door for alley-oop finishes. As he excels at that. His finishing isn't quite great. His float game is not really that good, especially compared to how Isaiah Hartenstein was just chucking those things up and putting them down for 2 points over and over again. He does not have that kind of offensive, firepower at all. And so forcing him to take shots away from the basket is going to be a pretty interesting turn to see. At the same time, the Knicks have a method of ways that they could go, attacking Victor Wembanyama. Do they play small to keep up with the team and keep bodies under him to prevent and slow down, stagger his movement a little bit? Do they go big with Karl-Anthony Towns and Mitchell Robinson starting at the same time and maybe have Mitchell Robinson handle him just for checking and boxing him out on those rebound attempts to keep him off the glass? It's a fair question, and it's a fair suggestion that was brought up to me because, hey, you have other people going through this, and they're seeing that Hartenstein was the main cover for pretty much the rest of the series on Wembanyama. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it absolutely did not. You just hope you live to, see another day at that point. That's really all it comes down to. That's all you can do against that. If you ever had to face off against him in a 1v1 like style setting, I could not tell you the fear that would be struck in some people's hearts having to do that, because it's genuinely crazy. But keeping him, playing hot as well, again, getting bodies under him, putting multiple bodies on him, and making him see at least some semblance of an effective double team or scare tactics that can ward him off a little bit. Because as has been seen, especially in that Thunder series, when he starts off a game hot, this team as a whole doesn't seem to cool down. And it also helps when, he is also a decent part, but a part of the team also hitting first in general. The Knicks want to grit and grind you out, and I've been saying that countless times. They've had games like that this offseason, as hard as it is to, suggest that, with them now being on an 11-game win streak, with them now having blown the hell out of each and every single one of their last few opponents. This entire playoff run, it has gotten very drastic to play against this Knicks team. But, hey, it was never impossible to get it done. They're just going to have to truly, and I mean truly, be smart, be calculated with their decisions. That is the best medicine here. And you have to try to match the physicality all game long, because it's coming from both sides. You know it will. Even if they, have met each other in the final of the NBA Cup already as well, which was also mentioned to add yet another layer to the randomness of things. Like, even with them, dapping each other up, giving each other handshakes, and signaling a game, I mean, these two teams in this spot right now, they want to take each other down. They don't want to let up. They shouldn't want to let up. And so, this could be very hard fought, especially for the first few games. There is a real rest versus rust style element, because, of course, the Spurs are just recently coming off of playing Game 7, literally on Sunday, not that long ago. Meanwhile, the Knicks have been resting for at least 9 or 10 days, and that has accumulated essentially over the last couple series as they've just stacked up big win after big win. It's not even just about getting the rest off the court. These guys, in ways, have not even needed to play the entire fourth quarter, and that is an element of the game that could really come back to, put a shock into everyone at that point. Because with them being that well rested, you're a bit more comfortable in a sense, with having all of them go out there and, trying to suit up in a pivotal moment, potentially trying to secure the lead back or just maintain the pace of a very well thought out game plan. Like, there are a multitude of ways in which they could go with it, but regardless, it's going to be a task nevertheless. In other cases, and the Knicks themselves, if they don't choose to start Mitchell Robinson, they could still go with Cat. And there's a world in which they just decide, hey, we're going to have one down, that being Wembanyama roaming around, and we could have Devin Vassell potentially deal with Karl-Anthony Towns. That in and of itself seems like a mismatch. And you can look across the board for the wing forward talent. For the Spurs team, there doesn't seem to be as much depth from the standpoint of, hey, we can easily, whenever we want to, score on the offensive end. However, the fact still remains that this team does go pretty deep. And so you're looking for those wing players in general to provide you with good defense, especially if they're starting. So your Vassells, your Castles, especially on that front, and your Champagnes. Their starters for the Knicks seem to have a lot of height and a lot of weight advantages on all of these wing players. And that's something that, again, if you're trying to impose your will, you're not totally against, rather, having those guys attack that. Now, the trick to that is having to settle. In the same way that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander might typically want to get in the mid-range, you can have players like Mikal Bridges still put that up several times, as efficient as he's been. There may be times where he has to, settle for it with the Wembanyama coverage down low. Same thing for, OG Anunoby potentially trying that, and most importantly, Jalen Brunson, especially if they put a wing like Harper or even, Dylan Harper or Stephon Castle on him at any one point of time. That could be an issue to navigate. And so it'll be interesting to see what the Knicks do in those situations. I think there may be others where, hey, if Wembanyama is set to, attack a specific assignment in close proximity with other ball handlers here, man, oh man, the floodgates could potentially open for the Knicks in that regard. If you can draw Wembanyama out of the paint, Cat has got to win those kinds of matchups. If Vassell is the cover, they may give him those post touches. I do fear, though, that, with him playing from the post, they could still be willing to leave Wembanyama down low. And that could throw a wrench in everything as passing lanes, especially on the interior, get harder and harder to make with that much wingspan surrounding you at one point of time. However, if they can successfully draw Wembanyama out of the paint and bring him up to the three-point line, rather, then it's like, okay, now we're talking. So, they have their options. And just, again, seeing what works and what doesn't is truly all a part of the first game, generally speaking. It's about just going out there, playing, and trying to come up with things that stick. If there are things that have to be changed up, you will obviously have time to talk about them, of course. But for the most part, you're feeling it out. The game and the series has just started. You're not trying to get that deep into your toolbox until they show you something that you absolutely cannot refuse to know. From that standpoint as well, boy, Landry Shamet, I'm telling you right now, they've got to try their best to get Carter Bryant facing off against him for the sole purpose of his movement on the defensive end. Just keeping a body on Shamet at all times and not allowing him to get loose and jack up three-pointers. Like he's been that money this entire playoff run. And still, nobody has much of an answer from him on that area of the court. So that right there, honestly, could be one of the most pivotal swings. And anyone, again, as we say, anyone can be a threat in these matches. But hey, you never know. So that's my brief series insight there. And granted, I probably could have gone a little more in depth, but I just want to do my best to talk about this as quick as possible and get everything up and running. The 76ers hired Mike Gansey as the new president of basketball operations recently. Also, I think it was mentioned that he previously done work with the Cavs. I could be wrong, but I would have to check that in a little bit and add that in post because of the lack of true service at this point. Rick Adelman, the father of David Adelman, the new head coach for the Nuggets, and also a very accomplished head coach in his own right. He passed away at the age of 79 on Monday. In fact, just around a couple weeks before his 80th birthday. It's a truly heartbreaking time for each and every single one of those people right now. You could not envision something like that happening to a person whom you know that well, whom you love and care for like that close to potentially adding another year of life onto that number. And just like that, due to reasons that I would still have to see in a deeper, press release, he is now gone. I just, man. The only way to go from a situation like that is up, and so you wish he and his family nothing but the best, and send over prayers and condolences to them as they go through this time. because it's absolutely rough. Meanwhile, to, again, try to pivot from that, even, when an athlete is still around, it's always, a good thing to give them their flowers, obviously. Now, of course, you would hope that this is reciprocated in the same way by other parties, and it's safe to say that in the context of shoes, China came through big for Stephen Curry. They came through big, because via breaking news from Shams Charania on a more recent report from the NBA, Stephen Curry broke his time as a shoe free agent with the Li-Ning company. They make shoes, and of course a couple other athletes like Jimmy Butler III and Dwyane Wade are on that line as well. I actually watched a very short clip of Stephen Curry himself making the official announcement and move on YouTube. And he cited, a couple things, including the quality of the shoe, with some shade, as other people in the comment section alluded to, and the fact that, hey, this is truly global outreach. This is something that is very unprecedented when it comes to deals, generally speaking, and especially for this company in particular. And you just have to respect that. I mean, the fact of the matter is, to me, that in ways, although you would not expect Stephen Curry, a player who has been at Under Armour, who would have been at Nike if it weren't for stupid-ass Nico Harrison. He's been with those kinds of shoe companies for such a long time. Obviously, things came to a head, and he split from Under Armour, retaining his Curry brand and still releasing shoes in that way. And, during this time, he was going on a tour with, promoting the shoes, promoting the brand, holding training camps for other athletes and things of that nature, and really getting a chance to sit down and know the very people involved in all these things, and trying to buy his product. That happened in China, I believe, in 2025. The atmosphere surrounding that entire tour for Stephen Curry was electric. I mean, you hadn't seen anything like it. It was he there, it was AZ Fudd there. Man, they were getting all the love from this Chinese crowd. They were lining up the streets, lining up the blocks, trying to meet Stephen Curry. They were flooding entire venues just to get a hold of witnessing this man do his thing in real time. That is how you know that he is a player who, despite what other people have been saying about how he is not as marketable as such and such, I find that hilarious when you see something like that go down. He has that kind of pull over there, and we're talking business like that. That is as good as it gets on both sides, and this will truly benefit the both of them in such a good way. I can tell you that right now. The deal is set to last for 10 years, which is a landmark, especially for this company. Meaning that he would be signed, technically speaking, all the way up until 2036 or 37. Yeah. That is a very high but warranted price for one of the biggest players in the game. And when I say that, again, they were willing to pay. Whether it be the currency for China or the US dollar. That man, Stephen Curry, is getting paid from this. He is not leaving empty-handed. Because I promise you, a 10-year deal worth over $400 million, per other sources in the shoe brand business, stated and told Shams Charania, that's how much this deal is worth. They were not fooling around. They are a company that, hey, understands that we can still stick true to making our product into what it intended to be without ruining the fabric and the integrity of our work that we've built. You could argue that maybe some of the other companies Steph was a part of around this time started to do that, and then clearly just did not put enough respect on his name. Nico Harrison fucking it up, Under Armour trying Stephen Curry, and having him eventually step down and ink a deal like this, it's a huge slap in the face to everyone else out there trying to compete for the next big superstar athlete to wear that logo or that company brand on their sporting outfits. It's insane when you think about it that way. Highly. As I wear this right here, that is pretty wild when you think about it. But yeah, no, you have to credit Steph Curry for that, like, genuinely. That is just, there ain't much complaining you can have about that at all. But that'll do it for this one. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.